my first impression of fiction and fantasy literature was not what I hoped it would be. So I grew up in for a period of time, a conservative Christian home. And we had Pilgrim's Progress, and we had Narnia, and we had all kinds of stories that were fiction. They definitely were fiction, but they had a purpose. There was a responsibility to read it. You were supposed to learn how to live a moral life. You were supposed to get the fear of bad stuff, scared out of you. So fiction for me was kind of something that you did because someone told you you had to read something, but it really was of no value. So I'm a nerd, and I love research, and I just spent a lot of years reading research. I wasn't supposed to go to college, but I ended up going to college. I was supposed to, get married and have kids because my mother's Italian. And I was awesome at research. I was at a community college, and I wrote a paper on calcium channel and aluminum causing Alzheimer's. I think my professor was like, "You're way out of your league, just stop." And I got busy, I had kids, my life was a disaster at points, I was a single mom, and someone said at one point, you need to relax, you need to read a good book. And I thought, How Not to Die, Eat This Not That, do all kinds of, what kind of research am I going to read? And they say, maybe some fiction, maybe a fantasy novel. And I thought, this is not going to work. Now, I will tell you, my daughter's an editor, and she edits smut. Yeah, she loves it, and she's good at her job. So her suggestions were, no, they were out. And at one point I was traveling back and forth a lot, every other week. And it was about an hour and a half, and it was on the turnpike, which is boring as all hell, everybody knows. So I had Audible. I had a lot of research on Audible. But I downloaded and I met my first fantasy fiction that I loved. I met, oddly enough, Stephanie Myers wrote it. I met The Chemist. And I fell in love with Alex, who was born Juliana, who was going by Alex, but then eventually became Ellis because, of course, she's someone who gets information out of people, and she was torturing a guy, and then she tortured the guy, but then she fell in love with the guy. Well, he fell in love with her, and she didn't believe it. Anyways, they were incredible. In fact, to this day, I fall asleep to Ellen Archer reading me to sleep almost every night. Put her on for 15 minutes and I'm out cold. And then I didn't want to do it. But I ran into Nora Roberts in the library. I was honestly horrified that I was reading Nora Roberts. I wanted to be angry at myself, but I fell in love with a woman who didn't know she was Irish, who ended up going to Ireland and being a witch. And I met the Dark Witch. And then I had to get the second book, and then they didn't have it at the library, so I had to buy it, but I didn't want to buy a new book because, that was a guilty pleasure, so I bought a used book, and then I had to get the third one in the series, and then I gave the whole series to the library because I thought, who else was going to read just one? You need all three. And they said they weren't taking books at the time, so they still stood on my shelf, and I'm waiting for the library because I'm telling you right now, once you read the first one, and then I found another series by her. And it was crazy. And then I started reading the spy novels, and then I do read some that kind of read like research, like Bones, the series. There's actually an author, and there's actually books for that, and then I like that. And then I told my daughter that I watched the Harry Potter movies, but I didn't read the books, and, she shamed me. So I have those, and I'm mostly all the way through. The last one is very thick, and I know once I get started, I'm not going to want to deal with people. I'm not going to want to talk to anybody. Audible is my friend, and here's what happens. I get into a trilogy. Trilogy is the most, some of them were more than that, but anyways, I get into a book, I buy the book, I like the book, I read the book, I enjoy the book, then I have to get it on Audible. Then I have the book on paper, then I have the book on Audible, and then I start listening to it on Audible, and then I have to get through the whole series. And some of these are like 7 hours, 11 hours long, and I have things to do. I have people to take care of. And I say things like, I will run errands, because the longer I'm out running errands, the more I'm listening. And that's all I'm going to say. And if anybody here tells anybody in my family that I'm listening to fantasy novels, I might deny it. Thanks.